5 years ago, roughly, I got a phone call from the CTO of a telco, and he said, Joakim, we have a problem, and some of my managers told me that you were the person to contact for this. Okay, interesting. Let's hear it. Well, our core IT systems crashed. I was like, okay, not sure if you have the right person. I don't think I can help you with that. Well, the problem is that we've outsourced most of our IT development to India. And now it turns out that they actually don't know how to fix this problem. And we have no competence left in the company who actually know how to deal with this. Okay, still not sure how we can help. Well, our view is that, and this is, everyone is saying this as a company, we have too many coordinators and very few engineers. So we're not sure what to do. How can we turn this around? The problems that we see is, we have replanning upon replanning. No one has the big picture, what we're doing. And we actually have no idea what's being developed or when will it be done. We have no transparency. All right, so now we're closing into some things that I could probably help with. So, okay, this sounds a little bit more intriguing, but, what company doesn't have this problem these days? Are you really interested in fixing them? I said, well, we also had McKinsey here, and they did this organizational health index, and it turns out we have a very unhealthy organization. Of course, McKinsey also offered the remedy for this unhealthy organization. But apparently it wasn't enough. Okay, so now it's actually starting to get my interest even more, because I know, all modern good companies care about their employees and know that that's an important asset, even though they've outsourced most of it to India. The ones who are left, they care a lot about. So maybe there is actually some sense of urgency, and we need to change here. But then what really got me was that, and then we have this problem that Google is coming. Google has contacted all telcos and said, we need these 3 APIs, and then we can take all customer contact. You can bother with the network and hardware. We don't want to do that, but just give us these APIs, and we'll manage the rest and take over the customer contact. So that was a real sense of urgency. This is happening. So now I felt, okay, you're ready to change. So this is something I can work with. You got a sense of urgency, which is really important. And I learned that the hard way. In other companies I've been involved, we want to do an agile transformation, we want to get safe. And why? Yeah, everyone else is doing it. It's supposed to be good. We've heard good things about it. We've done agile for years, and we're ready for the next step. And they see some opportunities to improve and so on, but I don't really feel the sense of urgency. What was actually different with this client when I started working with them was that when we said, okay, I wonder what we should probably think about the product owner role. Maybe we could get some people together and talk about that role. The next day, all the top managers in product and business and so on spent half a day in a workshop just figuring out, okay, what should we do? I didn't even have to, convince them or talk to them. There was an urgency. We need to fix this. We devote a lot of time to this. In another company where I worked, the management had said, the executive level had said, this is a transformation journey, we're doing this, and it's important to us, but also these projects and that project and this change and this business goal is also important. So when I tried to do the same thing, I couldn't even get people to come to the meeting. Well, 2 weeks away, maybe. People came to the meeting, we realized these are some things we need to do. Then people would go back and not do anything. I don't have time to do this. My manager isn't asking me for this. They're asking me for a bunch of other things. I won't do anything until my manager is actively asking me to do something. So that's the difference to me, to really have a sense of urgency. Or rather, if you can, the more important thing is a shared purpose. You should never create a sense of urgency. We'll die. It's terrible. We're all going to die if we don't do anything. If it's not a real reason for it. But rather focusing on how can we build a shared purpose that we all believe in and understand that this is important. It needs to be prioritized. So This was one lesson from the trenches in Agile transformations, particularly using the Spotify model, but most of the things I'm going to talk about is applicable not just for the Spotify model, although I have some special flavor to it. And in case you didn't know, I'm now with Crisp, a boutique consultancy in Stockholm, but I spent 6.5 years at Spotify when we were 8 teams, from when we were 8 teams to when we were more than 200 teams. So I was one of the people who actually came up with the names of tribes and squads and chapters and how all of this is going to work. I was one of the people going to conferences and saying, with the Spotify model, you can do better than the Spotify model, and so on. But then, turn around and say, okay, you're doing it anyway, so let's see, how can we help? How can we actually make it right? So the lessons that I'm going to talk about are based on one transformation journey in particular that I'm going to use as the story arc. But I'm also blending in a lot of experience from work with several other clients. I've done a course called Agile at Scale, inspired by Spotify, public and in-house more than 50 times, and follow-up workshops and conversations with companies who have actually applied the Spotify model or been inspired by it. I'm actually running the course tomorrow and on Friday if you want to join here in Aarhus. Experience from my other colleagues at Crisp, books, articles, blogs, conferences, conversations, etc. So it's not just one case, but many different. And it's 2 types of lessons. I'm going to focus first on the change journey itself and some lessons we've learned about that. And then what is actually changing in the organization and way of working when you're chasing the Spotify model. It might be more than most people think. So the first thing is, start as you like to finish. Introduce Agile in an Agile way, right? So I went to the Comic Agile workshop the other day. It was great. Where I borrowed this picture. We expect the full transformation to take a couple of years because first we want to do analysis and design and implement and test and roll it. Basically treating the change as a waterfall project. And I think it's very ironic that you want to introduce a way of working where you want organizing teams that work against goals, empowered to make decisions, increased autonomy, being more engaged and involved. And then you decide, how are we getting that change? Well, we do it as a top-down, one-shot project where we roll out an implementation, where managers behind closed doors create a blueprint of the organization because we don't want to cause concern, and we do this big reorg, and then, whew, we're done. We're not doing that for many years because it was such a pain in the ass. No, you should, of course, make it an iterative journey. We often use this model as an inspiration from lean change management, Jason Little. So just as you would with an agile product development project, really, or initiative, collect some insights, understand where are we, data that then leads you to brainstorm different options. What can we do? Maybe you do a cost value prioritization, and then you create some experiments and make the work visible, involve others. This leads to new insights, and on we go. And it's not by chance. It's a lying 8, eternity symbol, right? And it's an iterative journey where everyone should be engaged. Just as in Agile, we want the team to engage and care about the problem and take ownership. And I like this book, Beyond Performance 2.0. It's actually by a couple of McKinsey researchers. And they have the opportunity to have data on thousands of big change initiatives. And one of the conclusions they have is that people who feel they have co-created a solution feel 5 times more ownership than those who are told the solution. But there's plenty of other research, not just from that book. But it's actually a good book. So one way that we can engage everyone is in understanding where you are. If I had only 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and only 5 minutes finding the solution. Allegedly, Albert Einstein said that, but these days when you can check all the quotes online, it turns out no one has ever said the quotes that we believe they said. So, but let's pretend that he said that. It has some truth to it anyway. So what we did at Telenor, for example, we started by the people that we were contacted by and start trying to understand. Okay, so what is the problem here? What is actually going on? What is happening? Trying to put it in a easily understood and communicated picture. Okay, maybe you don't think it's easily understood and communicated, but everything is relative. You should have seen the first draft. And then we presented that to all sorts of different groups and said, this is what we think is going on. What do you think? And they had discussions, and they came up with adding things, subtracting things, refining this picture. So both involving and engaging everyone in understanding, getting a shared understanding of what are we actually dealing with here? What are some problems that we're trying to address? But also getting feedback too, and getting a much more complete picture. But it's important to not get stuck in analysis paralysis, or my personal flavor of that is value stream analysis paralysis. I think it's connected partly to SAFe and how they've messed up the value stream concept. They've kind of fixed it, or it's becoming better, so I'm not going to go into that too much. I'm a SAFe program consultant. I worked a lot with SAFe, so I'm not just bashing SAFe for the sake of it. But it's not uncommon to, now we got to get this waterfall project, get this to read. We really have to get it right. And you get stuck in this analysis. What could the values, if we are really organizing by value streams and customer, what could it look like? And you start involving the business, and yeah, you'll never find the perfect solution. So it's much better to just get something going, something that's good enough to start, and be more focused on this is just the starting point. It's a long journey ahead. And instead, try to think about how are we actually building change governance into this. I call it change governance. Maybe it's a boring word. I could come up with something better. But the idea is that instead of having this big reorgs where management is super involved in the beginning, making this blueprint, and then bam, implementing it, and then they're turning their attention to something else. How can we get them to continuously be involved and paying their attention to, okay, let's make this is the first attempt. What do we learn? How do we have to tweak it? What does have to change, and so on? So start with something that's just good enough. Develop a vision. So instead of we're implementing Agile because everyone else is doing it, what are we actually trying to get out of it? What are we trying to achieve? What's the end goal here? What's the outcome that we're striving for? It's easier for people to deflect and say, I don't think Agile is right. I don't think we should do Scrum. But it's harder for people to say, I don't think we should be, improving solutions continuously over time. I don't think that we should be serving our customers in a better way. I don't think we should be more innovative. You put the emphasis on the end goal, and then you can solicit people's knowledge, ideas, and practices. How do you think that we should get there? And put the ownership also on them, engaging them. And you can say that we believe that this Agile strategy, this practice, this method, this thing is going to help us achieve this outcome. If you don't think that's true, now the onus is on you to, okay, what do you suggest instead? And how can we try that? And how can we test that is really happening? But you also, of course, need to be following through on that and actually looking at the outcome. Are we getting faster? Are we serving the customer better? Are we getting more engaged people through using these Agile principles and practices and so on? And they also need to be developed iteratively. Again, it's not a one-off project. I don't know if you're familiar with double loop learning. So we have a goal or a direction. We take some actions and experiments. We get some results. And then we say, okay, are we moving closer to the goal and the direction? Yes, great, do more of that. Or no, we're not. Okay, let's try something else. But double loop learning is also using the results to reflect, is the goal direction the right one? Or should we adjust our goals, adjust the direction? And this is also not to get stuck in analysis paralysis. Oh, we first need management on board to have established a vision, and that has to be communicated, and people are sitting around waiting for this agile transformation to happen, but it's never happening because the executives are busy with nailing the vision. So get something out there and develop it iteratively. You probably have a good sense of the direction, even if it's not precise. And then bring in help. So if you're doing an agile transformation, chances are that you're not that agile. And then chances are that you don't have a lot of people who have experience of what it means to actually become more agile. Or maybe you just have them in pockets or in small teams and so on. So the value is great of having someone who has seen with their own eyes how this is actually working, who have run into some of the obstacles and some of the challenges, who can help guide you. But don't get too dependent on the hired help. You have to develop your own capabilities too. So again, this is a disease as with treating it as a project. Okay, we bring in a lot of consultants and do a lot of training, and then the initiative is gone, the budget is eaten up, and then it's just going to be, going on without us doing anything. But that's not really happening. This is one reason why we focus a lot on, for instance, establishing agile coach programs or scrum master programs or product owner programs, which is just not just a 2-day training, but actually, working alongside these roles to really develop them and develop your future capability of change. Because there's reason to believe, and this is an idea from Steve McConnell, author of Code Complete and more recently, More Effective Agile. The idea that an agile adoption is actually very similar to technology adoption. Maybe you recognize this Crossing the Chasm from Jeffrey Moore, where innovators and early adopters, they're pretty easy to reach. And that can fool you into, we have a really great new technology or a new business idea. But the really hard part is crossing the chasm and getting away from the people who want the newest things to people who want complete solutions and convenience. And typically in an agile transformation, in the beginning, we can get the people who are really eager to try new things. They will find time to try new things. They're open to it. They will do it in their own time. They will come up with their own ideas. And then, the big initiative is over. And now let's just spread it to the rest of the organization. But those are the ones that we need booked time. We need managers instructing us how we're supposed to do. We need, proof that others have succeeded and so on. And this is where you actually need the majority of support. And that's why you have to develop your own long-term sustainable capability. And this is also one reason why you should treat resistance as feedback to the change. In traditional change management, it's more like, this person is resisting. How can we create buy-in? How can we get them on board, get them on the bus? Which sounds more like persuading and convincing and maybe, forcing them on the bus, really. But it could be that, this role, this department, this team, they're not ready for the change yet. So let's not waste our effort and energy on them. Or what is it that's making them not being on board? Is it something in the way how we communicate? Are they not bought into the vision? Is it the practices, the implementation? What is it? What can we learn? Because if there's one team, one role, one department, maybe there are others, and we can actually learn from something like this. So resistance is good. Use it. And then work with the ones who actually want to change and celebrate your successes. And maybe there are already things like in the Telenor journey, there were some teams that were already cross-functional agile teams. They were doing great, which was one reason why they wanted to do more of it at the beginning. There was one project that was using a big Kanban board to visualize things that was really working out well for them. One department had a big room planning that one consultant had, one of the employees had introduced. What can we learn from that and how can we spread that? Agile teams in digital channels, converging line organization and value streams, which is saying that the reporting structure is the same as the agile teams. How can we leverage that? And that also helps with the not invented here syndrome. Oh, yeah, sure, that works at Spotify. But here, we're very special and we have so special circumstances. But if you can point to, there are other teams here succeeding. We're actually doing it in our building. And then, safe, less, DAD, Spotify model, Lean Enterprise book, which is a great book that not many people know about. Jess, one of the authors, is actually here at the conference speaking later today and running a course tomorrow. Really great book with lots of great practices and principles. So to me, the downside of safe or less is, it's a one solution fits all. This is what you have to do. And the idea of, oh, you can't just pick and choose. All the practices are supporting each other in a very intricate network. And no, not really. Well, to some extent, maybe. But your organization does have a different context. You might be in a different part of your journey than most. So use them as toolboxes. There are great things on the web for safe, for instance. Just don't believe that you have to do it according to the implementation roadmap, which is kind of strange that they have. And respect and leverage the legacy. Partner with HR and others to build on and further develop existing leadership profiles, training, values, cultures, and so on. And this is a common mistake that I've seen. For instance, some safe implementations, you have your ready printed material that you have to use from safe. And it's basically used to say, at least, that you have to abandon your old leadership values and blah, blah, blah. And you have to now move to this new model. And it's like, wait, what specifically is wrong with our old stuff? Oh, I don't know. It just says here in the training material that the old stuff is bad and the new stuff, that's going to save you. And you've probably alienated HR, who believes that, but we're the ones working with this and has put a lot of effort and we know about these things. And you're basically saying, no, you don't know shit. You should do the new thing. Which often is actually what they are teaching in HR. The biggest, every HR department that I work with in big organizations, they do great leadership training, great leadership development. So it could be a great partner, actually. What they typically don't get is team-based work. And they're focusing too much on individual leaders, individual managers, individual performance. So that's something where you can partner with them and, 1 + 1 = 3. Yes, and. All right, that was some things around the change journey. So now I'm going to shift to what is actually changing when you're implementing, or rather, being inspired by the Spotify model. And spoiler alert, it's not just agile teams. So transforming to the Spotify model typically means not only changing how you build and deploy your software. And this is what I sometimes refer to as old agile. It used to be all about, we work in agile teams. We're now building and deploying things much more frequently. We're able to release. We have DevOps. Awesome, great. Now we're done. No. What's different between most companies who are saying that they're using agile and they've been agile for years on a team level, and companies like Spotify or Google or Netflix or eBay, the great product companies, it's also a change in how you solve problems and a change in how you decide which problems to solve. And this also leads to a change in how leaders and managers actually work and how they support the teams and the organization. So I've organized these into some anti-patterns, slightly exaggerated, but I actually seen all of them in practice. The first one being lipstick on a pig, where you can see the org changes. We changed the department to tribe. We changed manager to chapter lead. We now call it front-end squad, back-end squad, QA squad. We basically just changed the names and now we're done, right? Okay. A friend told me that a bank in the UK had done something like this. Management one day called a big town hall and said, we've now changed departments to tribes and teams to squads. And you can all wear jeans to work any day of the week. It's like, we're Spotify now. But a more, less extreme, variation to this is that, okay, we call it squads and tribes, and we're working in agile teams, but we're not really integrating the business and IT through mission-based tribes, which is a key feature of Spotify. We have a shared responsibility. We work together, business and technology, product and technology, business and IT. We have a shared responsibility of this team of teams that we call a tribe or an agile release train, the 5 to 10 teams that are centered around the mission. And the way that we accomplished that in the Telenor journey was that we were successful in bringing in product owners for the teams were from the business side. The product owner tribe lead was a senior person from the business, which meant that the rest of the business kind of trusted them to run things. So that meant that they felt much more comfortable giving more autonomy to the tribes. And we were joking that worst case, we now have a hostage from the business inside of IT, so they can't attack us as vehemently as they've done in the past. But best case, and what actually happened, was that they now saw the power of delivering things every 2 weeks, being able to course correct and get data and feedback and understand what's going on. And they were going back into their organization and say, why are we doing annual plans when we have the opportunity to do quarterly plans and actually act on in every 2 weeks or 3 weeks? And another often overlooked thing with the Spotify model's tribe and how it's different from an Agile release train, for instance, in SAFe, is that the question we set out to answer is, how do we get bigger and still feel small? Meaning, how do we increase our impact and still support people feeling like they have access, are part of establishing direction, are autonomous and trusted, and have a strong sense of relatedness? It's really about building a sense of team in a team of teams. What my friend M. Campbell-Priddy has called tribal unity, when she applied these concepts to an Agile release train in a SAFe situation in Australia many years ago. And she's captured a lot of good practices and patterns to apply to increase this sense of team in a team of teams. We wanted to close off the tribe and so that most of the people that you need to get things done, they are in the same tribe. So you can actually have a good chance of having relationships with them, know who to go to for help. They will help you because they know you. All of these, building a relatedness and trusting each other. And the amount of time we actually spend on doing that by having exercises, shared experiences, shared information, and really rallying around a shared mission. Related to that is the other anti-pantheon of sausage factory. And this came from when we were doing an assessment with a company. We talked to different roles across the company, and several people actually described it as, oh, so I actually sit inside of or in front of the sausage factory and decide what they should be doing. Oh, yeah, and I sit at the end of the sausage factory, so I take care of everything coming out of the sausage factory. So they treated IT as a sausage factory, really. We put orders in, we don't know what's going on in there, and things come out in the end. Maybe it's just me, but I was thinking of, I think it was Otto von Bismarck, who said that the makings of politics and sausage, you don't want to know. So there's an image in my head that something's going on in there and you don't want to know. It's but some things come out and they taste okay. I don't know what they're made of. So, and this is a big difference as well. The autonomous squad, the most important feature of the organization at Spotify. All other features are designed to support that mini startup-like squad. And this is what the CTO at Spotify said, and this is how we viewed it. A squad at Spotify is like a mini startup. They are empowered to come up with solutions to customer problems, not just implementing specifications or someone else is thinking and we're just doing. And since then, this terminology has been expressed as empowered product team, but by Marty Kagan and as Silicon Valley Product Group, and it's kind of taken over. When I say autonomous team these days, people think I more talk about releasing independently and not having technical dependencies. But what we really always meant was an empowered product team. The most important thing is to empower teams by assigning them problems to solve and then give the teams the space to solve them. And this means that you give them outcomes. You have a world where there are a lot of pains and needs and declining results. This gives you ideas on products and features and enhancements, but they quickly might turn into specifications and requirements. And now that's what we're concerned about. Are we developing the feature on time? Is it fulfilling the specification? And we kind of lose sight of, but what about the outcome? Are we changing things? Are the pains going away? Are the needs met? And it's very naive to assume, well, the user said they needed this. We gave them that, roughly, a little bit late. So we assume that we achieved the outcome. And we're actually too busy jumping on the next project to really check. And it's not within our control anyway. Well, that's the thing that needs to change. You have to move from opinions to data. We're working on X because Sam said it's important or the specification says so. We're done with it, but Sam is okay with it or the specification is fulfilled. No, we're working on X because we think it's going to give impact Y, which matters to Spotify or Telenor or your organization because of Z. And we're done when the metrics have moved. And this is a very big difference in how we solve problems. It's not a separation between business and IT. It's not a separation between thinkers and doers. It's a collaboration. And this means that business people, product managers, product owners need to change often compared to what it's like in traditional plan-driven bureaucratic organizations, where we have to be collaborative leaders who get UX and product design and engineers and business together, because it's in the intersection of all these special competences that successful products are made. The engineers are the ones who are working with the enabling technology every day. They are the ones who can really come up with or contribute to coming up with innovative solutions. Maybe you know the story of Henry Ford. If I would have asked my customers, they would have said faster horses. But it's only if you're working with enabling technology that you can understand the underlying need is that they're really asking us for a car here. Which is connected to the third anti-pattern that I call the cheap mercenary. The idea of we can just reduce costs. IT is a cost center. And we can get results by reducing the costs. Sometimes with the excuse of then we can also get a talent that is hard to recruit near us. And this is coming from John Doerr, the guy behind OKRs from Intel. He says we need teams of missionaries, not teams of mercenaries. People who really care about the customer, the business, the product, and so on. And to which Marty Kagan adds, hopefully this is obvious, but a strong tech-powered product company would no sooner outsource their engineers than they would outsource their CEO. Because if we understand that we need engaged engineers to be part of innovating on behalf of the customers, it doesn't make sense that what talent should we develop? Who should we engage? Is it our outsourcing partners in other countries or is it our own talent? So prepare to insource. At Telenor, they had reached a lot of great cost reduction by outsourcing. So this transformation, this journey that we're on, it's not about outsourcing or not. Let's not reduce it to that, because they knew that there were critical voices. But as soon as we were getting into what's the vision, what do we want to accomplish and so on, it was clear to everyone that outsourcing is not an option. So they started insourcing. And I've been to other companies meeting the exact same thing. No, we think outsourcing is a really good strategy. But as soon you get into it, empowered product teams, how are you going to do that with outsourced engineers? I mean, this is nothing against, using developers in other countries and so on. You can do that as long as you're not outsourcing it. There are very innovative and smart ways to how you can use what formerly was in outsourced partners to actually tie them closer to you, have more named individuals working long term and so on. But this, black box time and materials outsourcing is probably not going to cut it. And I think this is one reason why the Spotify model has become popular in, for instance, banks and finance, because they have outsourced to a large extent over the years, and telcos, IT and development. And now they're starting to realize, shit, that was not such a good idea. The problem is it looks great for the executives that do this enormous cost cutting. And then you don't get the bad consequences until years later. And then the executive is typically already gone to another job. So you have to bring this development competence into the organization again, make the engineering a much more important role in your organization, and really engage them and involve them in solving business problems. And I think this is why chapters have become popular.
A chapter at Spotify means that you're, besides being part of your squad where you do your day-to-day work, you're also part of a chapter of backend or Java or mobile or QA, where you spend a lot of time thinking about what's great QA at Spotify, what's great backend, what does it look like, and you spend time together with your peers, establishing shared work beliefs and really raising each other's competence. And it's much easier to recruit and build this competence if you have chapters. At Telenor, for instance, we had one Scrum Master chapter where the manager, she was managing a bunch of Scrum Masters. And they met every week. And they said, okay, what can we do together as Scrum Masters? How can we build the best Scrum Masters in the world? What do we see in our different teams that we could collaborate on solving together? How can we raise each other's competency? And then we had another who was stuck in the old world. It was a manager who had 2 BA, 1 QA, 2 backend developers, 3 mobile developers, etc., etc. When they get together in a week, what do? How can we become the best? There's just no focus, no commonalities between the people. I think that's the strength of chapters. And also develop the people to become servant leaders, so that in turn develop servant leaders themselves. So at Spotify, we would expect everyone to become a leader, in the sense that you need to care about the team's success more than your own success. You need to think about how can I increase my impact by raising others up, by improving others, by mentoring others, by sharing what I learn and my competence in the rest of the organization. So the difference is not being the leader as an expert who people go to for permission or ask what should we be doing or who coordinates people, but rather being the leader as a catalyst, thinking how can I solve this problem in a way that increases the commitment and capability of the person who is reporting to me. Another strong pattern that we saw that is kind of obvious, I think, in hindsight, but very few do. I was skeptic when we introduced it at Spotify. We called it potluck, product owner, team lead, agile coach. And potluck also means knytkalas in Swedish, the party where you all bring your own food to share. So it was sharing different perspectives kind of thing. Squad trio, sometimes called. And the thing here is that in an agile transformation, you often have someone who's new in a Scrum Master role, someone who's new in a product owner role, a manager who's, I don't know how to navigate this new context. I'm supposed to be hands off, but still help the teams, but these others are helping the team. Typically a lot of confusion. And then people go to the documentation, really. What's my responsibilities and try to figure it out. Because they don't have a natural place to meet, but they're all responsible for a successful team. So just putting them together and say, meet every week, have a meeting where you agree on what's the most important thing you can do together to help the team get to the next level, to challenge the team, to grow the team. And this has been a huge impact for many transformations, that suddenly they can actually start helping each other and take this shared responsibility and support each other also as well in the potluck team. All right, so the last anti-pattern. We need a plan. We need to know what's getting done. So typically in traditional organizations, management has a responsibility. We have the responsibility for the company. We know, okay, we shouldn't be in there in the details, so let's do it through big projects at least. We can focus on only the big projects and let others figure out the detail. But the problem with that is to do projects and decide which project should we be doing, which should we not be doing. You need detailed budgets. To do detailed budgets, you need to know what are we actually doing. Who is going to be involved, what resources do we need, and so on. So meaning you have to lock down a lot of decisions and make decisions for people who are doing the work before they are even remotely involved in the work that's being done. And then middle management, the only thing they can do is, okay, we're not responsible for the outcomes. The projects are already decided. We can do resource allocation and then check, are we delivering on budget, time, and scope? Probably not. And then, because we want to be efficient as we scale, we build departments for recruiting and career paths and so on. So we get up these frontline silos where collaboration becomes hard. And there's no real feedback loop between what's happening on the floor and top management, because we have to wait until the project is done, typically. Then we get some feedback. And then we're already late on the next project, so we don't have time to act on that feedback, really. Exaggerating a little bit for effect. So instead, aligned autonomy, we have teams that are small and long-lived, self-organizing, focused on missions, so goal-driven, and have feedback loops that they can actually know, are we doing the right thing? Are we improving the lives of the customer or the user? And collaboration between squads as needed. And management focus on what's the vision here? What are the goals? What's the strategic context that people need to know to make informed and good decisions? Servant leadership as described, and removing obstacles for the squads. And then if we can get things out much, much faster and get data on how it's being used, information on what is it doing for the customers and the users, then we can have transparent information flowing in both ways. Having what we learn in the teams actually inform strategy. If we also run strategy quarterly or monthly instead of annually, as many companies do. This might also mean changing the way you do budgeting and portfolio management. You can have one lever to adjust capacity. That's how we did it at Spotify, where we wouldn't have a portfolio of projects that we approve on a project basis, but rather a portfolio of tribes, of missions. And this one we could, change pretty slowly, but because we're working in an agile way, what the squads deliver, anything that's not started yet can be replaced at minimal cost. So we can change that week to week. We can decide, okay, let's take another track. Let's move in a different direction. So we're doing budgeting like, okay, creator will now get more headcount, jam fewer, quest a little bit more. That's how we decide how much we want to spend in the portfolio. And then we work with what goals do they have? What metrics, KPIs should they be pushing? Exactly what they do, it's up to them. And one thing that helps with that is to then give the teams problems to solve. For example, using objectives and key results to give them an objective. Okay, you're supposed to shift this customer segment, make this mainstream users engage more with the product, increase subscription in this area, or whatever it can be. And then the last thing here, big room planning, as we called it, PI planning in SAFe, but a little bit looser and make it to what you need it to be for transparency and collaboration. And this is an anti-pattern that I've sometimes seen in PI planning or big room planning, that it's not the developers talking to each other, but rather, we have a dependency. Then we send a scrum master or a product owner to the other team, and they talk to them. Oh, we have this dependency, and okay, and then they go back, and the people who actually have dependencies, they never talk. It's always the middleman representing and talking. And then we're just introducing even more misunderstanding, more confusion. So in a big room planning, it's a lot about just transparency, collaboration, talk to people, understand who do you need to know about, what are they doing, and just creating this relatedness again, and these relationships. The social function of it is really, really important. Don't have time to go into the nuances of it, but one thing that we are also actually noticed in how we introduce change is that we started with an early big room planning with only, 18, 23, 29 squads. In the big cafeteria, we had the executive team come in and talk about things, and decisions were made, what should be focusing on this quarter. And pretty soon, the rest of the organization started, what's going on in there? It seems to be really important. There are important people. And when I asked a team, can you get this done? They said, oh, maybe we'll check in the next big room planning. What's happening? So next time it was like, okay, marketing sent their squads there as well. We want to be part of this. We need to organize. So we need to collaborate and coordinate. And the next time, oh, networks organization. We should probably be in there because you seem to be making a lot of decisions and strategy. And the next iteration, there was suddenly finance say, hi, we have a tribe. And we were like, you have a tribe? How come we don't know about it? And it turned out that they'd drawn the conclusion that who are invited? It's the tribes that are invited. Okay, let's start a tribe. And all of a sudden, it was like a vortex sucking in more and more and more of the entire company, and everyone wanted to be there, and which also helped, of course, a lot of the planning forward. All right, so wrapping it up and going back to the original story at Telenor, how did it go? Well, they presented this at some events themselves, the executives, and these are the numbers that they showed that I borrowed. Cycle time for new feature request was reduced from 170 to 27 days. Overhead was reduced from 41% to 32%, and they measured, you remember the original, too many coordinators and too few actual engineers. So they actually increased the number of engineers and decreased the number of people just coordinating efforts. Still, 32%, so there are some ways to go. But this is the one measure I was most proud of. Employee engagement index for IT, most effective, increased from 22%, worst in class, to 58% in just 2 years. Telenor Group called us in and said, what have you done? Have you cheated? And the company who did this survey had never seen such a change in 2 years. And actually, they got to go present on several different conferences. There was a conference Adobe organized, and they are, out of all customers we have in Nordics, Telenor Sweden has the strongest momentum in the digital transformation. We even struggle to find comparable companies in Europe. So I didn't think, it was no Spotify, that's for sure. We had a long way to go, but only by having these changes, things increase, or engagement increased for a lot of people. So I think that there is a possibility to actually be inspired by or copy parts of the Spotify model and actually be successful with agile transformations. And these are some advice you can follow, but your journey might look different. But hopefully some of this can be of value to you.